quorum. So we can call to order and start the meeting. Public comment on items not listed on the agenda. I don't think, no. So we can go ahead and start with the Preservation Grant 9-13, the 619 6th Street, Francis Urbanager House. Whoever's here for that, if you want to come forward and go ahead and sit down and state your name and dig into it. Just got to push it.
There it is.
Yeah.
I should know better. Rocky Smith, here, kind of been an advocate for the Ermatinger House for many years and live in Oregon City. The Ermatinger House is arguably the most important house in the city. It's a year older than the McLaughlin House. Perhaps the only Hudson Bay Company house in existence. It's an amazing place, and it's falling apart. And the city, of course, owns the house, and so I've been pretty adamant about trying to find ways of dealing with preserving the house so that it doesn't just fall down. And it's not good. The windows are one of the things that are really crucial right now. Last year, the city put some storm windows to protect the upper 3 windows, but the window panes are actually falling out of the house. And so that's not only an issue with the windows themselves, but it's actually now, because the windows are not being fixed, it's causing damage to the rest of the house. And so we've been looking for different ways. There's money now set aside, urban renewal money set aside to help the house, and we were hoping that that $10,000 that was set aside could be used to as a match for other grants. And since the windows were one of the focal points, that's kind of why we're presenting this tonight. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to do a little bit more work because there was 3 estimates, 3 bids that were given. When I looked at the 3 bids, I wasn't really sure if the city had selected one of the bids. Find out, of course, that the city wouldn't typically go with the lowest bid. In this case, which was, I believe, around $8,000. The concern that I had with that was that the lowest bid really didn't fix anything, or really didn't fix or preserve things to the extent of the other bids. I didn't feel like I could really compare the 3 bids because they weren't talking about the same things. So I think, and Christina, I know, has kind of a plan and about where we go from here, but it sounds that maybe what should have happened, we should have went through a process of a request for proposals, RFP process, and I think that we'll probably go do that. I left it a little bit vague in terms of the amount that we were asking for, because the highest bid was the $13,000 bid, and the lowest bid was $8,000. So I said up to $13,000 for the whole project, assuming that it would be like a 50-50 match. There is obviously, reading your criteria, a limit to $3,000, except I noticed in your criteria the specific section that talks about an exception to that. And so I labeled that in there because I really think to some degree this house may actually fit within that and might allow us to help the house even more. It basically states that if the house is of citywide importance, which I believe that not only is this house of citywide importance, but probably statewide importance, that possibly a $3,000 limit we could go beyond that. But it also states, and I thought this was important as well, that if the competitive process may affect the integrity of the building, and I think that we're getting to a point where if something isn't done fairly soon, it really will affect where the building's at. And I don't know how many more winters it's going to go through until we have some really serious damage. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up. So I was kind of vague on what I was asking. We have $10,000 as a match for whatever we get, and then hopefully we have some to use for other grants in the future. But what's included is the three estimates give a kind of ballpark, but I think then we'll go through the RFP process or whatever.
I can talk about that.
But the photographs are there, and so if you have any questions that I can answer, and then it was kind of a collaborative thing. The city, of course, owns the house. Since I'm really supportive of the house, I said I'd put the pieces together that the city took the photos and did the bids and those things, and then I put it all into this form to bring to you tonight.
The city took the bids. Who was responsible for getting these bids?
This was done through the Parks Department under Scott Archer.
And I do have something to add about the RFP process when Mr. Smith is done.
I think that's all I
Okay.
really-
Yeah, this is one of those situations where we have the city's procurement process requirements and then our historic review board preservation requirements. We aren't required to take the lowest bid. We look at our funding formula and look at the bid that most meets the preservation grant criteria and expertise and what the grant will pay for. Talking to Scott Archer last week, it looks like the quickest and easiest way to meet everyone's needs is to do an RFP where the city can discuss the factors that they will use for approval and for choosing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the lowest bidder. They can look at preservation background, contractor experience, what they're proposing, their skills. So I'm working with the Parks Department this week to write that RFP, and I'm going to give the bulk of kind of what we expect out of the contractors. And it's going to be mailed out to the 3 that made the bids, and I'm going to provide 3 to 5 more names from our preservation directory. And they're going to have a chance to go to the building next week. And the goal is to have formalized basically new bids created through the RFP process by the October work session. And it very well may be that the Hammer in Hand, which was the applicant's first choice, not the city's, may still be the first choice, or there may be a new contractor or bid that comes in through the second process that may be looked at and proposed for the chosen bid. And so I think with that, it'll meet the city's procurement process of being able to not have to take the lowest bidder. Since we are looking at kind of apples to oranges, whenever you have 3 preservation contractors, you're going to have kind of 3 different recommendations and 3 different expertise. And this way, the board and the city can look at it in a larger picture rather than I need to get an HVAC quote to put, like a traditional, I need to get a quote for this, and all 3 are going to be doing the exact same thing.
How long would it take to do all that?
Well, the goal is to send out the RFP within the next 2 days and have a week turnaround.
It strikes me as unseemly for the city to be asking for grant money from the city. Is there a precedent for this?
Pretty much everything the city does.
Well, no,
I will say that I have the same opinion in many cases.
I understand completely
Yeah.
the need to maintain this house, but this rubs me like an end run around the budgeting process, and that I don't like.
I just like to say I think that this house would be designated as a museum.
It is a National Register property.
Well, but is there a difference between that and a museum?
Well, when Mrs. Powers gave it to the city, it was supposed to be used as a museum. The city doesn't have funds to keep it open as a museum, unfortunately. It's very unfortunate.
Well, I'm kind of with Ken. I just don't think that this is what the grants are for. They're for homeowners. The grants are for people that don't have the money. I mean, to get their homes fixed up and put their windows on and stuff. And I love the Ermitinger house. I want to see it preserved, but, you know, our tax dollars are supposed to be funding that. And I just, you know, I have a problem with it.
I agree with what you guys are saying, but at the same time, we haven't spent all the preservation money this year.
Well, so this is for this year's preservation grant. We have spent it for last year. So this would be the
For the
2009.
next year. Okay.
Two- 2000
15,000
yeah.
we have, they're looking for nearly half that for
Well,
that.
And in my recommendation on staff, I recommended that the board, if they choose to go with the normal funding formula.
Yeah. Well, I totally understand what everybody's saying. It is a city-owned property, and it's kind of a circle as far as you're coming looking for allocated private funds for a city project where it really should come under the parks and their budget.
And I think that if this does nothing else, it again shines the mirror to the city of Oregon City, who is not taking care of their own
Sure.
facilities. And
Sure.
so I want you to know that I've been probably more vocal than anyone else in this city about our city not taking responsibility for its own buildings, and that's what's happening. So much so to the point that I wrote this grant myself because the Parks Department wouldn't do it, or did part of it and whatever. But the house is falling apart, and the city is not doing anything about it. And so, if nothing more,
Well,
I guess we can also, you know, cite the city for demolition by neglect.
That's what.
can we do that?
didn't we have, isn't that what happened to the McLaughlin house, that we put it to the state? I mean,
That is a brilliant
No.
That's a-
idea.
Yeah.
It's federal now.
And they donated it or sold it to this
the
federal
state.
government.
Yeah, I think that we could do that with this house.
Well, the federal government has
It was supposed to, but it didn't happen because it was originally part of that, but it was pulled out by the Parks Department when D.
well-
Craig was here.
I think the issue is if they can't keep them even operable, that.
No, this is not in the same mix as the other museums.
Well, I guess it's the matter of, you know,
No, I know
That's
what
it.
you're saying.
yeah, I think we're in concurrence as how we look at it.
Right.
And then Marge and Roland did everything they could for the last 10 years to try to just keep this thing standing.
And it's
It's falling down.
composting.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
Okay, so with that, because by the way, that something. Your response to me tonight, it didn't occur to me that this was the way it was going to go, and I'm actually kind of intrigued by it because it's something, like I said, I've said many times myself, and so I'm really lost as to how to save this house, and we thankfully have at least some money now to look for some matching grants, so I would ask that if any of you have any help
Maybe
or
the
consideration.
State, the state, you could go to the state for grants.
well, that may be an option. Since it is on the National Register, there is an ability there is a pocket of statewide funding for National Registers. It's very competitive, but that may be an option.
Yeah.
Well, this house has significance, but I'm
Yeah.
just looking at it as this
Oh, but-
money that we have
But
is
actually,
private.
right, but I think the state that money is actually prioritized for public because they can't take advantage of the federal tax freeze program, and so this state grant program I'm thinking of may be an option. Though it is really competitive, but it may be something to look at.
Okay.
Okay, so you take it from here.
I can. I mean, Mr. Smith brings up a question about demolition by neglect, and obviously that's not something
Well,
tonight.
I didn't bring it up.
Okay, well, the board.
But I'm glad it was brought up.
But it is a larger question that the Historic Review Board may want to take a look at the Ermitinger House condition this coming fall, winter, maybe set aside a work session where we can get a site visit, and it may be worth it for the board to make kind of formal comment to the city commission. I mean, outside of that process, but to kind of start that dialogue if that's something the board wants to pursue.
I think that's where it's got to go. So if there's something open with the city, they might look at it from our perspective of what the money's for, and the perspective from the parks,
Right.
and where funds can be allocated for possibly the upcoming year. I don't know.
Parks may need to
Well, at
adjust their
least,
budget.
well, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, and possibly the $10,000 is just we use it all for the windows.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. All right. Well, I appreciate that. Actually,
Yeah.
I really do. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll still be working with the Parks Department on their RFP because I need to do that anyway.
Right.
I'll make sure that kind of the preservation guidelines are kind of entrenched in that RFP of what the city is looking for repair. The one thing they did have, this is more of an FYI to the board, outside the grant process, there's still review on a staff level for changes to an exterior of a designated structure, and also I'm sure the State Historic Preservation Office would want to get involved. So if any window is proposed to be replaced on a staff level, I'm going to need to get a lot more information from the contractor on why. So that same condition of approval that was on the grant about providing more information when it's above maintenance and repair is still going to be there, but it's just going to be more on a staff level rather than as a condition of the grant approval.
And I would like to make sure that, they don't just go in with normal double strength glass.
No,
If
yeah.
they're repairing it, it's actually table glass.
Yeah.
It's-
We're not done with this, I guess.
No.
But thank you for your time. Did you
Thank
want to
you.
say anything else?
No.
Okay,
Thank you. I really do appreciate it.
you bet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rocky. Good luck.
Sir, would you like to come up and comment? State your name.
Thank you. I'm Paul Edgar, Land Use Chair
Ooh.
in the Neighborhood Association,
Paul, can you speak closer into that? Sorry.
and somebody with very good knowledge of not only the type of construction of the big bigger house, but because my house is built identical, and I rebuilt my house 100%. So the construction, the balloon construction, the type of windows, everything is identical to what I had in my house and I fixed. What I would turn around and tell you, and plus I've traveled, tripped through the house, talked it all, looked it all over. It's a shame. What I saw there and what can be done and what needs to be done is just massive. I know what I ended up having to do to my house, and it was like every single domino in the world fell once I got into it, and it got completely out of control. But this is one of those examples of a place. And all I can, when it got to glass, and I commented directly with Christina, and I've talked with Todd in the past, we have one of the best glass man, historic window guys, that has a business right in Oregon City, out on Central Point Road, is probably bar none the best in Oregon. And he was not included into this. And he has, Todd has seen how some of his quality work, and it's perfect. It's perfect representations of the type of historic construction. And for us not to have even invited him to the table when he has an Oregon City business, I felt was a shame. I felt it was a travesty. But more important about this is that we know that I agree with all of you on the use of the money, because I'd like the use of the money for a resident in Kenema that's got an old house. He doesn't have any money. He needs siding. He needs some windows. We need to do a bunch of stuff. And I would love to press way past the $3,000 just because the guy, that's probably the only way we're going to be able to turn that house around or save it. And I've brought him the applications. I've hand carried him. I've worked with Christina to try to make it happen. But until he's afraid. And it scares me that he's afraid. He's afraid that if somebody looks into his house, they'll find everything else that's wrong.
Paul, what's your thought then?
Well,
What do you?
my thought is that no matter whether we agree or we don't agree with the use, putting a little bit of a finger in the dike is better than if any of us let this thing collapse. And that's literally what we're faced with. The stupidity of what's happening. I can't explain it. I've tried to go for preservation grants, and the city takes half of the money out of the preservation grants and uses it for uses that's when a Metro Commissioner said, I don't know of any city that I've ever gone to that takes Metro grant money and uses it for city causes. That's what they said right there in the meeting. So we have problems, but this house we cannot lose. That's my problem.
I agree with you, but, you know, for it to get to this stage, and all of us that have old houses know that for it to get to this stage, the city has been ignoring it for a long time. And I mean, people have probably been asking the city to do small little things to keep this from happening. If they would have kept up with the small little things, we wouldn't have this problem right now.
No one disagrees.
All right, so, but this is the city's problem. This is the city's responsibility. And
I agree, but the problem is, we're facing what's really catastrophe. This is that bad.
Demolition by neglect.
that's what we can do.
And
If we
How's
can-
it different
But
from the Cochrane?
I think this discussion that you're having really needs to be with the
With the city.
with the city and with
The
the
city
parks.
commission.
That's right.
Yes.
It should be
And
taken right before the city
Once they
commission.
get a notice from us that there's a demolition by, that we agree that there should be a demolition by neglect, that will start a new ball rolling.
I would 100% support that effort. I would not, but again.
well, let's call it on that.
But do not, we cannot delay things. That's my feeling.
I
Oh,
I
it's
think
been
I
delayed
would
for 15
give
years.
the council an opportunity to respond to what we're talking about right now before we press for the demolition by neglect, because it would be profoundly embarrassing for the city to file a
That's, I
demolition
think
by
they need to be
neglect
embarrassed. I really do.
ticket against itself.
I would be very happy to help you in any regards in that, to make that happen. But again, I ask of you, please do keep your finger in the dike, that's all.
Well, Paul, I appreciate those comments, and
Yeah.
definitely carry it on to a much higher, more powerful level than us.
I think
But,
Christina's suggestion about a work session with a tour of
we
the house is.
we need to go and look at it and see how bad it is.
How-
But thank you,
Thank you. Thanks,
Christina.
Rocky.
Are you good?
I can have about 2 minutes.
Okay, we'll take 2 minutes or 3 minutes for
For Christina to tune up the machine.
yeah, because
It's glacial. I don't know what's going on.
glacial. It's not glacial outside.
It's perfect.
That's sun. Yeah, did you see that?
That was pretty.
Oh my gosh.
Last night was cold, too.
I didn't see the moon.
It was just a little thin sliver.
I was out jogging the other morning, and there was a thin hallow moon, crescent
Mhm.
moon, and Jupiter
Yeah.
was sitting right here. And I thought, oh my gosh, that was amazing.
That was last night, too. That was cool. It was. I was kind of surprised that Rocky made this.
Well, the house is a piece of junk. The city's ignored it. It's not like all of a sudden we got to fix things.
Right, it's not like something happened a month ago.
Just deferred maintenance. What happens? It costs more and more. And it's not this money that you put in.
It was moved to the site. Fowler moved it there in the early 80s, I think. You remember when you were here?
For, in the 80s?
When the house was moved there?
No, no. We did, when we first moved here in the early 90s, we took a tour through there.
Mhm.
And it looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, all the wood was, nice and fresh and kept up and clean.
It was moved and put on a foundation, and it was early years. Did a
From
great job.
where was it moved?
It was down about 3 blocks below Dolphin House on North Street there. As it
Okay.
goes down, there's it's kind of disjointed.
Yes.
there. And it moved them down.
Yeah. Well, it's all that fur and it was all,
Yeah,
we
it's-
were comparing it to the crappy fur in our house.
Well,
Saying,
yeah.
wow, we had really good fur like this, we painted, we wouldn't paint it.
Actually, a lot of it was fine.
Oh,
It was, that's some good house.
but it was kind of reddish, so
Right.
maybe they
The
stained
standard
it.
there. But it was moved there, and then it was open to the public for a couple of years, and then we didn't have anything done.
Yeah,
And they had volunteers that came in. and did
Yeah.
everything. And then the volunteers
they
made
should
some
have,
requests for
they should have asked volunteers that were, handymen, carpenters, people that would give of their time. I mean, if they can't pay to have that repair and maintenance work done, they need to have volunteers that know how to do that. These houses can go hot like that.
It was basically a large garden.
Yeah, wasn't she the one that had the teas and
Right.
dressed up in costume and stuff? They were their pennies off.
That's so frustrating because the city didn't have
No,
it.
they'll just let you do it. They'll just let you go on. Well, I've quit doing those flower grants because now the flower grants that I go and I write up a grant every year for the flowers coming in my neighborhood. I'm competing against the city because they're writing grants for the flowers that they used to just pay for.
Oh, really?
So now they're writing grants, and the Downtown Business Association is writing them. So the grants get 3 grants for flowers. And of course, last time I didn't get as high as Mark as I should have. So I just put it high. And they do something else because they had all those flowers. So I cut my and said, okay, we'll just do it for 6 months. And I wrote a letter to the city and I said, I'm not doing anything. I think it's really ridiculous that you're writing grants and then for flowers that you used to pay for out of pocket.
The whole budget process is kind of
It's just ridiculous.
it is.
If you can't afford flowers, don't hang them.
Right now they're looking so good.
Well, there shouldn't be down right now.
Really?
I think the ground goes to September.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, they're not supposed to even be hanging out.
They stopped watering about 2 weeks ago.
Well, the city's supposed to take it down.
I think Roy keeps saying, "Why is that like this?"
But he totally knows what we're talking about. Because he's the one that said that flowers. He said, why are 3 people asking for flowers? Yeah. And I'm sitting there on his one. And he used to just pick up their tab.
Ken, I appreciate your comments.
Yes,
They were
thanks for
very
raising that
pointed.
flag, because I wouldn't have had the guts
Well,
to
I
do it.
just couldn't feel comfortable about it.
No, and when I read it, I kind of had the same thought.
Okay, we can reconvene and start with HR 907, new single-family residence McLaughlin Conservation District, continued from last month's meeting, which I was not here. So go ahead and,
Okay.
Christine.
Thank you, Chair McLaughlin. Unfortunately, the PowerPoint presentation is not available, so unfortunately tonight we're going to have to do doing some flipping between pages of the revised plans that the applicant gave. I'd like for you to go to page 69 of 83 of your packet, and this shows the applicant's resubmittal letter, and I'll go through the 8 changes that he proposed and then kind of go through, and we'll see them on the subsequent layout. As you recall, at the previous meeting, there was some redesign request that the board asked of the applicant to come back at this meeting. On staff level, I recommended Phase 1 conditions and Phase 2 conditions. In my memo from the packet, I've reiterated the recommended conditions of approval if the application is approved tonight. I'd also like to add a number 9 after we're done. Upon further looking at some of the window proposed on the new layout, I'd like to put a little more specifics on some of the larger windows that look like they aren't 1/1, and they may need to be revised a little bit to break up to be a little bit smaller. And I'd be curious what the board's direction is on some of those redesign of the windows. And so I'm going to hold off on that recommended condition number 9, but I'd like it if the board could work with me on that one as we get to the end of the hearing tonight. But on page 69 of the packet, I'll just quickly read through the things that the applicant has revised on their application. Number 1, the front gable has been increased in width by 2 feet, and the octagon tower has decreased in height by 6 inches in order for the front gable to have a more dominant presence over the octagon tower. In order to make this modification, the front entry has decreased in size by 2 feet, and the side lights next to the entry door have been eliminated. Number 2, windows and doors are still under review. Once a window manufacturer has been selected, more information will be provided for the board for review. On my condition in my memo, as condition right now, all windows must be made of wood, and I know the applicant has some, might have some presentation on alternate window design, so I know that's up for discussion tonight. Number 3, the north elevation has been modified, and that's the elevation with the windows in the bedrooms on the second floor. The north elevation is modified to reflect a new window in the upstairs bedroom. This window is small, 1 foot by 6 inches by 5 foot, and is located about 6 feet 8 inches off the finished floor. A matching window will also be used in the back bedroom. Number 4, the revised plans show a new kitchen and nook layout with new window sizes. The modification shows moving the windows toward the back wall and changing the window sizes along the back elevation into the kitchen. The breakfast nook windows have been changed, and these are specifically the windows in the rear elevation I'd like to address as a potential condition of approval, number 9. Number 5, the living room door to the back porch has been changed to a French door per a condition at the previous hearing. The dining room now shows a new access door to the front porch. The door is located along the south elevation. And the main roof pitch has been changed to 812. It was previously 612. That was per the recommendation of the board. And the overall height now is 31 feet 9 inches, which is top of peak, which is not how the city defines height, but just so you know, top of peak is 31 inches, or 31 feet. And finally, the garage door has been modified to reflect the appearance of a double door. Again, a recommendation by the board last month. More information will be provided on the door manufacturer. It has been selected and will be sent in for review. I'd like to quickly go and show on the adjoining elevations the changes as described in the memo. The first page, page 71, which is right after this, shows the layout of the house next to the existing house on site. The site plan doesn't really change much between the two drawings, so I don't think that much has much effect on the revised drawings. On the next page, you'll see the 4 new elevations along with the roof plan. You'll see the roof plan shows an 8-12 roof. The front elevation, the main gable was moved 2 feet south, I guess, to make a larger front gable and a smaller front entry, and the side lights were removed. On the left elevation, which is the south elevation, I think that's where the new door was added. The rear elevation has the new windows, and I would like to have a conversation with the board on this design and size, if that's appropriate, specifically on the second story elevation. And on the right elevation, which is the north elevation, the applicant included the 2 long, narrow windows above in the 2 upper bedrooms. Let's see. On the next page, the main floor I don't believe has changed much with the rear garage on the bottom floor. Page 74 of 83 shows the main floor and upper floor plan. The main floor plan, you can see that the front entry the width has been reduced, and the office studio has provided a closet, and then you can see that it's in turn provided a desk area in the bedroom upstairs. on this upper floor plan, you can also see the addition of the 2 windows on the 2 upper bedrooms. The page 75 of 83 shows the new perspective of the existing house at 121 Jefferson, the Craftsman Bungalow next to the new proposed house. It is taller, but per the board's request, it utilizes an architecturally appropriate 812 roof pitch. Oh, unfortunately, we don't have a nice PowerPoint to look at the 2 drawings, and I will still see if I can try to upload those on our website. I mean, on our, while the applicant's speaking, I might be able to try again. But on a staff level, the applicant has attempted to provide, based on the direction of the board, I think the larger question is, did he succeed? And does this need to be further conditioned, or can it be accepted kind of as proposed in the revisions? Aside from the larger question of did he succeed with the larger or the wider front gable, I still don't think it's as prominent it needs to be. However, he did kind of heed the board's recommendation of going the 2 feet. So he kind of took the board's recommendation and specifics and did provide that. Does it meet the perfect overall goal? Maybe not. On the staff level, the main thing that I would like to get more information in from the applicant and the board is from direction on some of the windows. I think specifically the bedroom windows seem a little bit too long and narrow.
Tell me which figure you're talking about. Is it the left elevation, rear elevation?
Yeah,
drawings?
well, he uses north and south and left and right interchangeably, and so let me get back to it.
Left, north.
Yeah, actually the right elevation and the north is also the north elevation.
Right
So
is
is that
north.
on page 72?
Yep, that would be on page 72. You want to look at the right elevation? Those 2 new windows.
That's a window seat, but they're on either side of a window seat?
No, they're above they're at 6 feet above the grade of the bedroom.
Those
They're-
little slit windows?
Yeah, they'd be
Oh.
above a bed.
Oh, okay, because I wasn't here, I thought maybe
Yeah.
that we asked them to put those in there.
So on a staff level, I think those are a little bit too long and not proportional for a Queen Anne, and so I'd like to get more direction, especially from Mr. Isla and Mr. McLaughlin, on a proper dimension proportion for that. That's about all I have for now, and I'm open for any questions the board may have.
You were talking about windows that you thought should be 1/1.
Well, it's not necessarily 101, but the rear elevation, if you look at the redesign has a larger window in the
The one on the top floor,
The one on the top floor, and then also the kitchen.
next to the French doors?
Yeah, those are all a little bit large, and so it is the rear elevation. And it's not as prominent, but however, the property owners behind them will be able to see it. And
Well, they've got to meet egress, so if they're single hungs, at a minimum, they have to be 305s.
right.
So, you're stuck with that.
Right, but they're not 305s. They are. So the question is, should they be 1/1s, or should they allowed to stay as
What about the-
picture windows?
What about this left elevation? There's a rather
Yeah.
large window on the left elevation.
In addition to that, that's correct.
Yeah.
So I think that these larger, kind of more picture windows, it seems to me that we've kind of, the previous application in the plan showed divided like grids, and the applicant took that out, but in its place kept kind of these larger picture windows. And I think the number of them kind of
Yeah.
a question if it has gotten to the point where it's a little too contemporary, rather than having maybe everything else being in proportion and one maybe being more contemporary. I kind of question on that. So on a staff level, I need a little help making recommendations for revised sizes, or basically saying that they must be 1/1s.
Well, I think overall the massing is really a lot better than it was previously. I do think the windows need a little more verticality to them to be more proportional in style. This is a new home, though. It's not. We're not trying to replicate
Right.
something And I think we need to kind of keep that in mind too.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the picture windows I think could be divided up with simple mullion patterns, not something that's really, a French 15 light type pane configuration or something.
What would be a mullion pattern that doesn't turn, that's simple but doesn't become Craftsman? Because I've seen that smaller in a Craftsman version, but I don't know if
Right.
I've seen it be appropriate for a Queen Anne.
How about those little ones at the top? You were talking about the little ones at the top?
Oftentimes, yeah, on the Victorians, they'll have the divided light on the upper part of the picture window, and sometimes they might be stained glass. There'd be a proportion if, sometimes they might come down 6 to 10 inches with true divided light on the top, and yeah. I mean, we've all seen that on Victorian homes.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
And so in this case, I agree with Todd on the windows. It's a new house, but these larger windows to maybe solve that if they want to keep these the way they are, that I think that might be a way to break up the massing, is to have the divided light on the upper section of those, and that's characteristic of vernacular homes, Craftsman homes, but it started with Victorian,
Right.
and that's where they used the stained glass, and then that's where they got away from it.
And the horizontal windows, if those were just divided into 3 different sections,
To 3 parts.
I think that would be very appropriate.
Yeah,
Oh, you mean the small windows?
the right side looks like a jack-o'-lantern, but
It does.
So anyway, I think that's kind of.
So for the left elevation, what's your recommendation on that window on the left elevation, since it is a little bit wider than?
I think the same thing, yeah. I mean, and I also look at where the turret is. That's where you would more often than not see
Decorative glass.
the decorative glass, the upper divided light through that band.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was in that band, it could also carry through to the
To the other.
to the left elevation and the rear. You do the same thing. And then on the right, like what Todd was saying, these what look like 4020s or 5010s
So they could just-
could just have vertical divided bars. It often
Maybe they don't need to be true divided light.
No,
So I
maybe not.
understand
They
the
could go
cost
less
associated
expensive.
with that.
the thing is, typically on any type of a home that's built today, the front's always decorative. They get to the back,
The 2111 shows up.
the different things show up, the different types of windows show up, the less expensive windows because they're secondary and tertiary spaces. But in a case like this, it's almost got to be, for the most part, kind of brought around.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know the applicant wishes to speak tonight, so we can come back to the staff recommendations,
So,
but
are you good that we can have them come up?
yeah, and then I think at the end, depending on what other issues are brought up, I might work with the board on specific wording for that final condition number 9 on the windows.
Sure.
So in 3 months' time, I remember what was discussed.
Well, let's have you come on down and go ahead and state your name when you sit down, and you can go ahead and share your comments and thoughts and what you brought.
My name is David Gordon. Live at 121 Jefferson Street. Guess lots of discussion regarding the new design that's been laid out. I'm kind of open on window designs to a certain extent. Just depends on which direction we're kind of going with. I was kind of lost on some of those areas as far as like on the left-hand elevation. There's a large window there in the kitchen. I don't really want to go for a 1/1 in that particular area because it's going to make 2 rectangles, so I wouldn't mind going with the slider in that general, so that's kind of what I was looking for. So just put a vertical line down the middle of that
That's
and turn it
the-
to a slider.
What's that big?
It's the kitchen.
Correct.
This one.
So that'd be a functional window of some sort, but
But that's, we were
I'll tell
talking
you.
about putting small windows at the top. Little small divided windows at the top, go ahead and making it a picture window, but then what you have are small little windows at the top of the,
so you go 1/1 and then you put mullions
No.
on top.
You
You
know,
can do casement.
Same window that's there,
what's that called, Todd?
divided at the top.
what you could do is what Todd said was it's not really visible, but I don't know. For what it's worth, I'm a proponent at windows or kitchen sinks to you can have a picture window, but perhaps a couple casements on either side, so you can get the ventilation. However, casements weren't part of the Victorian era. However, I don't know how we'd look. I mean, that's a way to get a picture. So when you're at the sink, you don't have anything in the way.
Right.
And
That was the
cranks
goal.
are a lot easier to open over a counter than to reach over and crank that big slider over.
Right.
But that's
Are you
just
talking about this window here?
yeah, and that's just my
So it's going to open?
opinion.
Oh, okay.
It
should open.
If it's a slider, then it might be right down the middle of your sink, and so I don't know if that would be appropriate if you put it.
XOX.
Yeah, casements.
It's
are
not that big of a window to do an
Also,
XO.
don't
5
they have them
feet.
that open like this?
Yeah, but we're also trying to think what we just talked about. Casements, awnings are the most expensive type of windows.
Oh.
So,
But-
and I'm sensitive to cost. Windows are expensive, so I think we can be a little flex on some things.
Yeah, I think just being a slider even breaks it up a little.
Oh, yeah.
As it's shown as a picture window, that I think is more difficult. And it is not really visible from the right of way. It's so far back,
And
it's down the hill.
that's the side. That's the side that faces your house now.
Correct.
Yeah.
I guess I don't have a problem with it being a slider.
Would you have a problem if it was like a picture with casements?
No,
I don't.
but I think your point is it's not that wide of a window. It's only 4 feet wide.
Right.
Yeah, you could actually on that's a 5-foot window.
It's a 5-foot window now. I'm still trying to design that kitchen layout, but I was just wanting to put a kit door window there above the sink and try to figure something out in that area.
You
so.
could do that with 12 or 14-inch flankers, casements, and have a pretty decent picture in the middle.
Yeah, I'm also trying to keep a little money now.
Or 14-inch sliders on either side. too.
Yeah, you could do sliders. Yeah, whatever. That would be the least expensive way to go and get you the ventilation on that window. I think the windows at the front of the house, particularly at where the turret is, they need to have something to break up those windows.
How so?
Aren't those 1/1s?
I think they need to have, well, let's see. It's kind of like, it's kind of like
Okay, that's what I was talking about for the picture.
on a single hung window. If you look at a lot of Victorian homes with all their gaudiness, they took this area and they made divided light, and oftentimes they put colored glass there. And so what happened is this stayed as kind of a popular window through the teens into some craftsman homes and some vernacular homes. A lot of English Tudor that kind of revised, and so that was kind of, it started with the Victorian era.
This is Oregon City. We have a lot of
Plain
vernacular
Jane,
Victorians.
vernacular.
Sometimes they
Yeah.
didn't put color in, though. They just had the divided
See that
glass.
Todd's right, but
I think the 1/1's fine. I mean, yeah, this would be nice.
Yeah,
It'd be more
I'd
true
love
the
to
style.
be able to put more decoration in there. I'm just kind of trying to keep costs down as far as the windows. I'm
You can
already
always
looking
do
at
it later.
30, 35 plus windows. So
and
the more I start putting more
yeah, and you're
ornate items
Sure.
on the windows itself, I'm just going to blow my budget.
well. And part of it is though budget's one thing, but trying to keep it appropriate to the neighborhood is sometimes takes a little precedence.
You
However,
go through that neighborhood. Most of the Victorians
I
are
know.
1/1. It's not San Francisco.
but like I said, I know, regardless of the window company, you're going to spend a lot of money on windows.
Granted.
So I feel that pain.
I mean, in the last meeting, I did bring up some pictures from actual Queen Anne's.
I saw those.
And none of those Queen Anne's actually have that decoration pattern that you're talking about. And none of the windows in our current neighborhood have that decorative pattern. So now I'm introducing an item that has not been introduced in Oregon City. So I'd be leery of doing something like that. I wouldn't mind putting ornate items on the entry porch area
Porch, sure.
and putting that decorative pattern below the beam line
Stick
between the
with it.
columns and kind of decorate it up that way. But once I start introducing something on the windows, I think I'm introducing something that's not in that area. So
Well, it's a cost thing.
On your
Before
rear,
anything.
on your rear elevation, the
Yeah.
the windows that are next to the French doors, are those going to be picture windows?
The windows next to the French doors, it depends on which direction you're looking at,
I'm
left or
looking at
right.
the rear elevation one.
Bay?
To the left or to the right of the French doors.
This one right here, with above the.
The bay window there.
That's just a 3050. It's the same as the front ones.
So
The
they're.
deck is in the way.
Yeah, the deck is in the way.
Oh, I see.
Those will be single hung.
Those will be one over
Single
one.
hung, just like the front
One
ones.
over
Yeah.
ones.
Primary window is a 3050 single homes.
Okay.
The only windows that changing are on that the right-hand side. The windows in the center, the elevation, those will probably get modified to a 3036 and turn them into a single or a 1/1 single hung.
How about the window that's above the French doors on the rear elevation, that square? Is that just a picture window?
That is just a picture window.
It's in the back.
It's right into the. There's a spot right there.
Is the door, the front door, is that divided light
No, it's not. It'll probably just be solid panels.
panel?
I'm still looking at doors, but it's an endless list on those.
I think we can leave that up to Christina to.
Sure. And the garage door, is that still is that a 16 wide and you've just created two panels, or is it two separate doors?
It is a 16-foot wide. I'm going to try to create the illusion of two actual doors. To
How?
actually get two doors in that space, it's going to limit my turning radius in there. I'm not going to be able to pull a car
Sure.
in. So,
So how are you going to do that with the doors if you're going to use one 16-foot wide one?
it'll be something, the pattern on the door itself to actually break it up. I'm still looking for manufacturers in that area. I have a couple of leads on some people. If I can't find somebody, then I'll probably build it myself.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you just make it one unit. It just has the just money. Yeah.
I'm not sure if one of the questions were on the windows in the breakfast nook. I was kind of confused.
Oh, I think it was, I was not able to read that those were 1/1 in the rear.
Oh, okay.
So now that I understand now that I reread it with the scene that the deck is obscuring it,
Oh, okay.
that makes sense now.
They are 3036 in that breakfast nook, but I'm kind of looking either 1/1s or casements or fixed, so I'm not sure which way we're going to go with that.
Yeah, I think on my recommendation for keeping the amount of fixed picture windows to a minimum and something like that being all 1/1.
Right.
Is that the window you're looking at right there? Right.
Yeah, this is one of the window samples that I was bringing to have you guys take a look at. This is a fiberglass pulled window with a wood interior. Not sure if you want to take a look at
Yeah.
it.
You see it? Dying to see it.
I like them. I think they're good windows.
And just to remind the board that currently the design standards require wood and fiberglass are approved on a case-by-case basis. So that kind of gives, for the new board members, direction on where we are when it comes to new technology. It's a case-by-case. And so far, fiberglass hasn't been formally reviewed for new construction yet, since we haven't had that many new construction requests since the board has adopted the standards.
Exterior.
Now, the fiberglass window, it is an extracted element, but it's also a paintable element. So once it comes in 3 standard colors, this particular model. There's other brands that come in 5 or 6 standard colors.
Is it guaranteed not to fade? Or can you paint it?
You can
Oh,
paint
you can
it.
paint it,
yeah.
okay.
The fiberglass is completely paintable, so if we want to change the color, we just paint it. A lot of what you're going to see also from the exterior is not so much the window itself, but the trim molding around it. And we're going to try to match that trim molding around each window to provide that feeling of an absolute wood case feelings.
That's how they come. Pop them out. But I like fiberglass. I like aluminum. It's got the look. It's a little bit hardier than wood. It takes a beating.
Yes, better than
Now,
That's one of the key elements too. Is it is more durable than wood.
I mean, it's really
Especially when you're 30 feet off the ground, you don't have
Right.
to
It's got all the,
It just has better performance all the way around, even from vinyl. Vinyl and wood contract at different rates than the glass, and this actually matches the contraction rates of the glass, so there's no
Fiberglass
separation
is
of the furniture and
more
stable.
stable. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions?
Good.
Thank you. I think this is,
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, what are we looking
Did
for
you want to mention anything
tonight?
else, or?
No, I think that's it. I'm just kind of, I think we're kind of looking for conditions of the board, just to take the next step and start the process so I can start building
so you can start building.
Personally, I think that
before the weather hits.
the reconfiguration on the front, it's subtle, but I think it has the desired effect. The turret is less dominant, increasing the size of the gable on the other side and changing the roof pitch, I think. Made a huge difference in the way it looks. That's my comment.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay.
Close the public hearing.
I think we can close the public hearing and open this up for discussion. Anybody wants to?
Okay.
Well, I think there could have been different treatments on the turret and different ways to frame it. And it could have been a bell cast roof or a square roof. But I think overall, I mean, this is a big improvement, and I think it's very compatible with what is considered vernacular Victorian in Oakland City. And since it is new construction, I think with the minor window modifications and the door that Christina could review, I'm very comfortable with this.
Mickey? Anything?
That's Cindy.
Or Cindy, I'm sorry. No, I don't.
Yes, you do. I like this
It's in
house.
Paris.
I wish I could build this house. Because
Yeah.
it does look old, but it has all the amenities of new. I think it's going to fit really well into the neighborhood.
Ken? Anything?
I agree with Todd's assessment of it. I like it. I think it'll be a good addition to the neighborhood.
Does anybody care to make a motion?
Well, hold on.
I'm not sure what the motion would be.
Yeah, we have a potential addition for number 9.
Well,
Yeah.
we could
Oh,
I think we already talked about it.
create that. I mean, in a motion, right?
I've written a potential.
Ah,
Let's hear our
Oh, well, then
motion.
let's hear it.
Yeah. Here's a potential condition number 9. I've actually simplified it because I think I understand what you're saying. So, exterior windows. The applicant shall gain staff approval for any window that is not a 1/1 window. The applicant may need to redesign these windows to break up, not the window massing, but the window, what's my verb, or what's my adjective? The window expanse. And so I think I've gotten your direction on the bedroom windows being a 3-part, fixed or however the applicant wants to do it, but not slider, just fixed. Sounds like a slider potentially could be allowed in the kitchen as the only one. And then looking at any of those larger windows to find a way to either break it up above or maybe on the side. Okay. And then,
The pultruded fiberglass. probably
so the
correct.
protrude fiberglass is okay for the
Yeah.
window. Okay.
Yeah,
So that's condition of approval number 8. But that the garage doors and the main door still proposed to be made of wood, or do you want to make a comment about the garage doors?
I think the garage doors, they're not visible, but
they're going to be made of wood if you're making them yourself.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
okay. Also, all doors, including the garage door, shall be made of wood, the exterior windows may be may use the. Do we have the specific name of that style of
This
window?
is a Marvin Integrity window. But
Or compatible, or,
yeah, or Milgard makes a similar one.
It's called Marvin Integrity fiberglass.
Pella makes a similar one too. The Pella one's too thin though.
Or comparable alternative. Okay, so we have revised condition number 8. All doors, including garage doors, will be made of wood. The applicant may utilize the Marvin Integrity extruded fiberglass windows or comparable alternative.
Should we put the word paintable in there?
All fiberglass products.
Yeah, fiberglass comparable, yeah.
Good enough.
And since we've named the actual wood, if he chooses another one, I can go back on the staff level and compare,
sure.
to make sure that they're the same.
Okay.
So those are my 2 amended conditions of approval, number 8 and 9.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this application, HR 0907, with the conditions as amended and discussed.
I second.
Okay. I guess we can have a vote.
Sure. Mr. Basinger?
Aye.
Ms. Toll?
Aye.
Mr. Eisland?
Aye?
Chair McLaughlin?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have your
Congratulations.
samples here.
Invite us to your housewarming.
And I'll be sending out a
Hopefully there'll be
notice.
full
Oh,
windows.
I'll be sending out a notice of decision with these revised conditions this week, and then you can turn your building permit tomorrow if you want.
Thanks. Okay, number 5, old business. Fence policy, code enforcement on 403 John Adams. Staff recommends that board open the item up for public comment and review the submitted materials from the September 8th, 2009 work session, determine if a revision to the fence policy is needed. A final decision is anticipated at this meeting. So, do you want to talk about this? Do you want to bring it up? Do you want us to just...
Unfortunately, I wasn't here at the work session, but, this all came as part of a code enforcement. And on a staff level, the Stroke River policy states that chain link fences are not allowed in the front yard. And on a staff level, I was working with the property owner that, I could have moved them through code enforcement, but they wanted to have a larger discussion with the board about the policy. And this has gone from the August meeting to the September work session, and now it is here tonight. At the work session, I provided a literature search of how different states have and different communities have approached chain link fencing and kind of the background on chain link fencing versus kind of woven wire, more utilitarian fencing, and what traditionally was done in the front yards. And at the work session, there was a petition submitted by the neighbors and some photos of the site, and I've added that into your packet for the record. And so at this point, the board can have a discussion about the merits of the policy. If the policy remains as is, I will be working with the property owner on a mitigation plan for removing the fence. There's no specific time period that, it has to be done. It's more, is the applicant working with staff to remediate that, and maybe some suggestions on the board of if the policy is to remain, what a recommended kind of mitigation plan for removal on my level.
Have any of you gone by to see it, drove by? What I saw when I drove by was a nice looking fence, but what I saw was those gates in front of your stairway detract from your house immensely. So if I was to make a recommendation, I would say you could keep your side fences and then fence to the house and leave your front yard open, and then put a gate a retractable gate across your front porch that you can't see from the street if you're home. And if you want to put it up when you leave, or you want to secure your front porch, you can pull that gate across and lock it, and get rid of those gates in front of your steps. Because I think, it is a nice looking fence, but it really detracts from the look of your house. That's what I saw. And I mean, I don't know if
Y'all can sit up here if you want. If you want to come up here so we can have a dialogue. And as we talk, if you guys can just state your names again for the record.
Don Zinn.
Becky Hall.
Thank you. Okay.
I was not at the work session, so I only have half the story here. So
I went
you were
online. I spent a considerable amount of time scouring the internet for the history of chain link fencing. I found out a lot of interesting stuff, but nothing to suggest that we should change the policy. Nothing that would suggest that there is an overlooked historical use of chain link fencing in this kind of application. And that's the thing. If I had found in any of the photo libraries pictures of early 20th century house with chain link fencing, I'd be very open-minded. But lacking that, I can't argue in favor of changing the policy.
Well, we were talking about maybe if we did even think about changing the policy, it would be like put it on a case-by-case basis. But then we started talking about that and saying it could be a slippery slope for people that are,
It set a bad precedent.
well, right, people that maybe put up picket when they really wanted chain link because the policy said they couldn't put up chain link, and now if we do a case-by-case basis, they'll come, back and say, "What'd you do that for?" So that's why we didn't go that route with the case-by-case basis.
Do you have any thoughts, Todd?
I don't think it's appropriate, particularly. I think our policy's been in place and unchanged for 20 years or more.
So
It's difficult because it's not a bad-looking fence at all.
No, it's nice.
And it serves your purposes, I understand completely. It's just something we've never approved before, and we're being asked to approve it after the fact. I have a hard time doing that.
So, Christina, is it true that you could use chain link on the side yard in the backyard, correct?
No, currently chain link is not allowed anywhere.
Oh, anywhere.
Mhm.
Oh, I thought it was just on the front yard.
So I guess where this puts us is, and I think we all can concur, it's not an ugly fence. It's
Right.
not a hideous fence. It's not an appropriate fence. And for this situation to come after the fact puts us in an uncomfortable, awkward situation because the code specifically states that this is not allowable. We didn't write the code. We're just here to, I guess, politely inform and I don't want to use the word enforce, but we're here
We're not code enforcement.
we're not, yeah. However, we have to look at the appropriateness of the neighborhood, the historical integrity of the homes, the historical integrity of your house, and the style of that house, and what's appropriate for it. So the testimonials that you gave us, I don't disagree with any of those. I'm sure it's it is nice. I saw it. It's not bad. It's just, I think the part that's kind of missing is the appropriateness to the historical integrity of the neighborhood and the district. I don't necessarily completely agree that you may not know that you live in a historic neighborhood. So I still think that with the information that the city provides, the neighborhoods association that's there, make it pretty clear that this is a historic area. I think we're in a current concurrence on the stylistic affinity of what this fence does and what it doesn't do. And right now, it's not doing it because it's just not appropriate to the neighborhood. Now, I don't think anybody here on the board wantonly is just thinking, make them take it out. Who cares the cost? I don't think anybody here would agree to that. I think we're very sensitive to the financial issues. However, it still came after the fact. Had you come in here asking for the appropriateness of the fence, we wouldn't even be talking right now. This would be a non-issue. You'd have come up with a solution that was appropriate for the neighborhood. So I've been stressing about this since I saw you 2 weeks ago, thinking, oh gosh, what are we going to do? And maybe others have too, hoping to figure out how to get out of this meeting. So those are my thoughts, and I think we have to talk. And
I think timing is an issue, and maybe it's a phased approach even or something. I mean, I'm open to that.
phase mitigation
Phase mitigation.
over how long?
I don't know.
Well, I look at
It's
it
a
as
tough
this isn't like they put vinyl siding on the whole house and they've got X amount of months to remove it. This is a fence that can be rolled out as quickly as it was rolled in. And I think any solution using what you have to try and make it historically appropriate still makes things difficult because you're going to exceed the height of what's required for a fence in the front yard based on the framework that you have, the posts that you have, unless you were to bring it down somehow. But it's still the big elephant in the room.
Well, it's 3.5 feet. That's what.
Code enforcement told us.
Right.
And there's people on our block that have 4-foot fences and 52-inch fences, and they don't get approached about that. I don't understand that.
There's something, if I may, what I don't understand is about the chain link fence. Like Christina's saying, it can't have it anywhere. Well, that was chain link fence that comes up to 4th Street, goes all the way around the back up to John Adams. That was, and up the sidewalk to my garage that was there before I moved in over 20 years ago. And there's just less than a block and a half away, there's chain link fence all over the place. That's 4 foot high on corner lots. And
These are just for designated structures in McLaughlin,
That's right.
the fence policy.
You have a designated structure.
how do you remove that status?
Well, it's a bit of a process.
Christina, what is it?
Well, in order to be reviewed for de-designation, it has to be reviewed on its merits, and it's a public hearing and a process, and the board would be reviewing to de-designate it based if it does not meet the criteria for contributing to the district. And I don't remember what the inventory form had in the 2002 inventory, but I mean, just looking at it, I think it is still contributing, but that's an offhanded, quick look.
Sure.
Or is it a zone change process? Or?
It's not a zone change. It would be a request for de-designation. And the board would have to review it on its merits.
Is there any cost involved with that?
$50.
I had one more question, if I may. It was my understanding that the house was built in 1923 when I purchased it, so I really don't understand what the historic value of a house built in 1923 is.
Any house that's technically older than 50 years is considered historic. And you live,
Eligible.
or eligible, and you live in a historic
I thought-
area.
Okay. I thought it was 100 years. or
No.
something.
No. And that also applies to materials. But for this district, it specifically states that chain link fence is not allowable. I mean, it's black and white. I could just sit here and say, tough luck. It's black and white. It's not for us to interpret it. It's what it is. And that's kind of how things are going to potentially play out. That, you know, so I don't know where we take it from here. We could make a motion. But
Right, well, I think it does-
To make a motion
I-
to leave it in the hands of code enforcement.
Right.
no, I think we have to create a motion with the mitigation.
Well, I think there's two. One, I think a motion to reiterate support for the existing policy, which is nice just to have on the record. And the second motion would be any direction you want to give towards staff for the code enforcement period of removing. So I kind of see a two-part motion, or two parts of a single motion.
Nobody wants to be back here. I guess the existing policy, I guess I'll take a stab at a motion here. The existing policy, I would support its continuation as is. As far as this process, I think we do need to go ahead with code enforcement. I would recommend some leniency in time frame, and I don't know what's reasonable, and I don't know what others feel about that.
I think we should give him a chance to try to find a buyer for the fence. I mean, it could be that you could find somebody that needs that, or maybe sell it back to the people that you got it from.
I've already talked to them.
They won't take it.
Or if you could utilize the posts and maybe come up with some way to conceal them, and, or
What would be the options on that? Putting 3.5-foot boards up to these existing posts, or even over the top of that, the chain, the link,
So you
Is that-
block it off, so you wouldn't even see it.
like cedar boards.
I
3.5
think you'd
feet.
still have to, all you would really be able to, if you did that, the only thing you'd really be able to keep are the posts. And the posts would probably have to be cut down.
They're at 3.5 feet.
They're 3.5
okay.
feet. They're
But
code now.
here's the thing, if they're 3.5 feet to the top of the post, they're still going to have to be dropped down if you're going to create a framework and a cedar fence so that it has the illusion that it's an actual picket fence and not
No.
seeing these metal posts that are all the way flush to the top of the
Posts
fence.
have rail work that goes in between, and I kind of figured this would be the outcome I'd get here, so I've already been thinking about how I can do it, and I'm thinking if I put 2x2 across those top rails, which means I'd have to get more rail, completely rail the bottom also, and put 2x4 top and bottom as like a nailer,
Mhm.
and then I could get the flat cedar boards go across.
The other thing is, you know,
That would work.
that would work. You could take the posts, you could wrap them with pressure treated, you know, screw into the post with something, pressure treated, and then wrap that in cedar to make them decorative so they have a little bit more massing than the fence. That's an option.
I think there are options.
Yeah, my recommendation, if something's proposed to kind of utilize the existing fence post I under get, but utilize actually the whole existing chain link, I'd like to throw this back up to the board for this one. Unless you want to give me direction. I mean, the idea is when you're done, I shouldn't be able to see any metal. That's basically the idea.
The
Right.
posts, I think, I don't know.
I don't know how you're going to handle the gate situation.
They'd have to be made out of wood.
Yeah, but I'm saying you couldn't,
So, okay.
couldn't mask the gate.
So on a staff level, if I don't see metal, I can approve
Correct.
the fence. If I see metal, I'm going to
Well, here's
not
the
be able to
thing.
approve it.
If we say, if we make a motion saying we enforce the existing policy, and that we also make part of that motion that code enforcement has X amount of time for mitigation, that mitigation also includes removing of the fence, potentially retaining the posts, but I almost think that they have to come back here to show us a design that's appropriate that we would approve.
Okay.
That's pretty much.
Yeah, I don't think masking the chain, leaving the chain link on there is an option, and masking the chain link.
So that's, if you want to make your motion in that respect.
That was the motion I just made.
But I'm talking about the mitigation part of the design.
Mitigation.
Or, just one second, the mitigation has to be something, if you're going to make the motion, it happens within 60 to 90 days.
Yeah, I was going to say 3 months.
So,
I think 90 days is reasonable, at least to initiate the process.
Because then, you're going to be into Christmas and cold
Yeah.
weather, and
but
you're
it's still
probably
going
going
to
to want to
be,
get it done before then.
it can still be done.
But it either needs to be an approved design or come back before the board within 90 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with that,
So can someone second
I'll
that
second.
motion? Okay. Mr. Basinger,
Aye.
Mr. Eisland,
Aye.
Ms. Toll,
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin.
Aye.
Motion carries. So to reiterate, the policy is reaffirmed. The property owner has 90 days to mitigate either by removing the fence or coming back with some type of redesign using part of the existing fence, but the board's going to have to approve any redesign within that 90-day period.
yeah, and that motion says, yeah, chain link is gone.
Or if there is no wood visible, you can.
Yeah,
approve it.
and if I absolutely don't see one iota of wood visible, I can sign off
Steel
on it.
rubber.
But no one iota of metal visible, excuse me.
Okay.
This is one of the toughest ones we have to do.
I know, really.
It's a shame because it adds a lot to the neighborhood.
Let's go. What's a shame is that your museums are crumbling around you. Forsyth House and a whole bunch of these other places, nobody's doing a damn thing about it. It's falling
That's not up
apart.
to us, though.
Yeah.
We're just here to,
But you can make the change in this code enforcement. You have the power to do it.
well,
You just-
thank you.
I'm going to see if at the October work session, if there can be a site visit on the Ermitinger House, so I will let the board know. If we can ideally do that from 6 to 7, that would be good.
Well, you might want to do it earlier.
Yeah, it's going to be dark.
Yeah, by
Oh, it's true.
October.
Okay, you're right. Well, through email, I'll get your schedules. If we can coordinate a daytime visit, I can do that too.
In the afternoon or something.
Yeah,
Lighting in there is minimal. It's even.
That's true.
Working.
that's true. So, okay.
What happens if they resist and say, screw it? What is code enforcement?
Code enforcement can go through the.
I hear him saying he's going to try to get
Well-
his house off the district.
Oh, hold on. The code enforcement process, they're taking to municipal court. And so we try not to get to that point, but that's what the city has to enforce their municipal code. And the de-designation process is a process, so if he chooses to do that, that's outside and irregardless of this process.
I think it would be a shame. I mean, he's lived there for so long and he's actually improved the house.
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Well, and if it doesn't meet the merits, then it will be denied. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the way local designation goes is you can ask to be de-designated, but it has to be de-designated on its merits.
It's good to see owner consent's gone back around.
So thank you tonight. This was a hard one, and I apologize for the PowerPoint. It was a really good one, too.
Do you want to get some police escort out there for us?
Maybe,
I don't want
Safety
that guy
in
seeing the
numbers.
car I'm driving.
so thank you very much tonight.
Oh, no.